Now, I love the energy that we just saw on stage. And we're going to speak actually now about things that will change. We will be speaking a little bit more, finally, about the roadmap for the Cosmos stack. It's going to be an epic presentation by no one else but Barry Plunkett of, once again, Cosmos Labs, and he'll be speaking about the stack, the road ahead, and the opportunity that Cosmos offers for builders. Barry, great to have you with us. It's an honor. Looking forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm Barry Plunkett. I'm the co-CEO of Cosmos Labs. I lead our work across product and engineering. We already heard from Mag about the overall Cosmos opportunity. I'm going to talk about our technical roadmap, what we're building for customers, and how we're working with different kinds of customers. And then Nico is going to talk about the Cosmos Hub and Atom pretty soon. After that, Vlad is going to do a really deep dive on the EVM, which is one of the super big things that we've been working on. And Devin is going to vibe code Cosmos chains with people. So I want to cover at a super high level what we're working towards on the product side first. Mag already told you all about this. In short, we're the core developers of the Cosmos stack. Everything that we do is to improve Cosmos, make it easier to build Cosmos chains, make it easier to run them, and help companies, enterprises get into Cosmos. So Cosmos has, and has had for a super long time, the best technology for building blockchains that exists, period. We already talked about how in the past 2 years we've seen more chains launch on Cosmos than any other stack combined. And what the real struggle has been for previous maintainers of the stack, for us, for the first half of this year, was what's the market, right? We have great technology, but where do we go and what's the opportunity? We have now, after searching and experimenting and having tons of different conversations with different kinds of companies and protocols and looking at DeFi and looking at interoperability, a real contender for something that the stack has excellent product market fit with, and that's payments and tokenization. I probably don't need to tell people in this room, but I will. Blockchain payments, blockchain-based payments, stablecoin-based payments are just better. They work better than traditional payment rails across literally every dimension you can think of. Traditional payments rails tend to be slow, available only on specific days or at specific times. You have settlement risk, you have high fees, you have low transparency, you have no programmability. Blockchain-based payments flip all of that on its head. You get instantaneous payments everywhere, around the globe, 24/7, basically for free, and with built-in programmability that lets you do a lot of really cool, really powerful stuff. And we're really starting to see this in the market. You're starting to see some of the world's biggest banks, biggest asset managers, biggest payment networks, Stripe, Fidelity, Franklin Templeton, some folks who are here at the conference today actually getting into the space for that reason. And so the question that we kind of have to ask ourselves is it too late? You know, are we entering the space around payments and tokenization too late? And our view, unsurprisingly, is no. We're actually really, really early in this new trend. Less than 1% of the world's assets have been tokenized so far in conversations that we've been having with asset managers that custody literally trillions of dollars of assets for people. They're just beginning to learn about technologies. They're just beginning to get into the space. Same with payments. There are literally quadrillions of payment volume done every year and less than $1 trillion on chain. So what do we have to do to actually seize that opportunity, right? There's 4 pillars of our stack roadmap today that I'm going to talk about: performance, connectivity, the EVM, and control. On the performance front, we're really focused on TPS and throughput. The reason for that is that we've been out there talking to banks, talking to asset managers who in 2020 built pilots of blockchains with Hyperledger, Hyperledger Bazoo, specifically not Cosmos because they needed the EVM. And what they're finding now as they try to bring those things into production is that they don't scale. They're having to build super complicated systems in front of them, behind them, to try to actually get the TPS that they need. So we're really, really focused on that. And there's two ways we're doing that: networking improvements and just trying to parallelize everything. I'm not going to get into a ton of detail, but on the networking side, we're trying to make the peer-to-peer layer much smarter. So right now, the way transactions, blocks, everything works on a Cosmos chain is we just dumbly gossip all data to all other nodes and validators. There's a huge amount of choking that does to the network. We're making that a lot smarter, a lot more efficient, coming up with creative ways to only broadcast the information that's needed, only to the validators who need it, in really intelligent ways. And then in addition to that, we're working on parallelizing literally everything. So ABCI, which is the interface between Comet and the Cosmos SDK, was designed in a way where it was intended to be used serially. So you can only be building a block, or you can only be checking a transaction, you can only be running a block. Some of that work has already gotten started with Block STM, allowing us to have parallel execution of transactions, and some of it has already gotten started with optimistic execution of blocks. We're trying to parallelize everything. So you can check transactions, build blocks while you propose or validate another block. And this is, really the goal. We've seen Cosmos chains that have been able to make a bunch of optimizations, a bunch of improvements, set up their validator set in the right ways to get to 10,000 TPS, but it requires a ton of expertise. You see Say doing that, you see Kronos doing that, but it requires a ton of expertise, a ton of customization. We need to make that available out of the box on day one for these institutions that don't have the best blockchain engineers in the world. We're very lucky with the Cosmos ecosystem that we stand on the shoulders of these teams who've made a bunch of improvements, who are excited to contribute them back to the open source, who we're working with to bring them into the stack so you get it out of the box on day one if you're Stripe or if you're PayPal or you're someone else like that. The second thing is connectivity. So earlier this year, we finally shipped IBC connectivity to Ethereum. We're in the final stages of also shipping IBC connectivity to Solana and to all of the Ethereum L2s, and really actually any arbitrary EVM chain, using a new light client that the IBC team has built, which relies on attesters. What this is going to allow, too, is on top of the new version of IBC, we're building a new tokenization standard. So this gets rid of a ton of the existing problems that exist in IBC that we see users and chains complaining about. You have this wrapped assets stuff, you have path dependency, you have all of these complicated things. This totally gets rid of it. It allows asset issuers to own their contracts, to program everything. So they can have whitelists, blacklists, they can ensure that only token holders that are KYC'd are able to hold their tokens, and they can add new minting and burning authorities, all without any in-protocol fees. So this is taking IBC really from sort of a developer-facing solution to something that actually addresses the full stack of needs that asset issuers have. And combining those things, what we really see is we're going to be able to build Cosmos chains that are hyper-performant, that have first-party ecosystem based on the EVM, and that allow asset issuers to issue their assets across any number of different chains. So it's really constructing a whole backend for this new wave of tokenization that's coming, and we're working directly, as Mag said, literally deploying engineers into the teams of a number of different banks and central banks to make sure that they understand how all of this works and that they are able to build on top of it. On the Cosmos EVM side, really what we've been focused on is connectivity, performance, and compatibility. So the old versions of Cosmos EVM, think Evmos and things like that, people really struggled with, right? I mean, many of us probably tried to interact with those chains. They're very difficult to use. They didn't have IBC compatibility. They had different addresses that you had to use for Kepler and MetaMask and all of these things. All of that pain, we've been working really, really hard over the last 6 months to get rid of, to enable IBC, to have seamless addresses, so it just works right out of the box. We've been working with the Kronos team and the Mantra team and the bHarvest team to make a ton of performance improvements, so these things can handle thousands of TPS right out of the box. So it's going to be really, really powerful. Vlad's going to talk a lot more about this later. And we're working on a native proof of authority solution. So what we've found talking to businesses, talking to enterprises, is that they don't really want to launch tokens. They don't really understand proof of stake, but they do want to have a decentralized security model, but they want to set it up in a way that they can control, where they can set who the validators are based on their particular regulatory needs. We've talked to central banks who need to make sure, for example, that all of the validators that work on their chain are in one country. And the proof of authority model that we're building is going to allow people to do that. So when you combine all of these things, the EVM, performance, connectivity, and this level of control, we really have one holistic backend for issuing real-world assets as an enterprise on a Cosmos chain and using that as the core operating system of how they're coming into this new digital on-chain world. We're really excited about all that stuff. It's not enough, though. So we're not just working on the stack, we're also working on all of the infrastructure around the stack. So Cosmos networks are still too difficult to operate. Anyone in this room who has built a Cosmos chain or runs a Cosmos chain knows that. It's really, really hard. But we talk to a bunch of traditional blockchain as a service providers. The way they solve all these problems is that they're fully centralized, right? They say, okay, well, we run all the validators for you. We think that kind of defeats the purpose of actually having a chain, which is that if you want, you can run all the validators, you can have other people run the validators, you can be as centralized or decentralized as you want. So we're building a new kind of platform that we're currently piloting with customers, which is not a blockchain as a service platform, but is a Cosmos fleet management platform that actually allows teams to build, deploy, and manage over time Cosmos chains with decentralized validator sets really, really easily, and to do that across their entire company without actually having any dedicated blockchain engineers or blockchain DevOps engineers internally. And again, a core part of this is we're setting it up so we can have modules, capabilities out of the box, integrations with tier one DeFi teams, think Uniswap, Morpho, these kinds of things, as well as infrastructure providers. So oracles, bridges, and importantly for folks who are here, validators, right? We need this to be decentralized. And so if you're interested in participating in this platform, come talk to us. We're currently piloting it with our first couple customers, and you're going to have an opportunity to participate. I have a lot to get through and not a lot of time left. So I'm just going to start. The next thing, as Mag said, we're really focused on actually going to these businesses, the teams that are talking about what are their tokenization strategies, how are they going to use stablecoins, and building solutions with them that meet them where they are on top of the Cosmos stack. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been partnering with one of the top management consulting companies in the world to think through for banks specifically, what are the big benefits for them around adopting blockchain technology? And the thing that's come up again and again in our conversations with banks and with these consultants is automation. And so what we built as a demo that's currently working with a number of customers is a milestone-based payment solution built on top of a Cosmos chain that allows banks to either issue their own stablecoin on that same chain or using IBC, import any number of existing stablecoins, USDT, USDC, and to construct these extremely complex B2B-based payment workflows and to automate the whole thing. Currently, actually servicing these kinds of contracts requires entire teams at banks to make sure that payments are being released when it makes sense, to make sure that there's not fraud that's happening, and to escrow and manage the whole system. This automates all of that, and what we're seeing is that when we show this to banks, they get really, really excited, right? It makes it real for them. We go from talking about, okay, like, maybe stablecoins are interesting, I don't know, I don't care that it's a blockchain, to actually seeing, oh, I could massively cut costs for the teams that I have internally who are responsible for these things. I could automate all of that, and then I have a lot more money to invest in growth. And so that story is really exciting for them. And we're not waiting on the sidelines anymore, right? I think that's a really important message here is we're going to them, we're working with them, we're building the solutions that they care about that fit into their business needs rather than trying to sit back and think about, well, what makes sense from our perspective? So on the ecosystem side, just to round it out, there's 3 really big pillars where we need help from folks today, in addition to the validator platform that I already talked about. One is that Frankly, there are way more businesses out there across more parts of the world who want to build blockchains than we can actually help. We are meeting teams all over the world. We're meeting teams here today that want to build Cosmos chains. And with all of the infrastructure, with all of the automation that we're doing, with all the performance improvements to the core stack, it's still not easy enough. These folks need teams who are expert in the Cosmos stack, who can go and help them build and deploy. We have a number of these teams across the world, and we're looking for more, right? We're looking for partners. It's a huge part of our strategy. So if you're interested in helping companies deploy Cosmos chains, if you have experience working with Fortune 500 companies in project management, in solutions, we want to talk to you. And related to that, we need more teams who are building enterprise-grade versions of all of the infrastructure that these chains depend on. Enterprise-grade block explorers, wallets, oracles, all of these things. There are huge gaps in the market today. The second thing that's really, really missing is privacy and confidentiality. This is huge. Whenever we get into a conversation with a central bank or with a regional bank or anyone, and they're excited about stablecoins, we eventually reach a barrier, which is, okay, I don't want to reveal all of my customer data to the world, or I don't want to reveal my supplier information to the world. How do I actually do that? And the solution right now is to keep your blockchain private. The downside of that is you're not able to access the assets, the users, the markets that are on other blockchains, and that's going to be more and more of them out there. They really want to be able to interoperate with other banks, with Solana, with Ethereum, with all these places. And so we need to have better confidentiality primitives. We're super interested in talking to teams who are working on these, who want to build them into the stack, or who want to build even licensed modules on top of the stack that we could work with these companies to adopt. There's huge opportunity here. And then finally, stablecoins are still way too hard to move into and out of the ecosystem, whether that's from other chains, off-chain sources, anything like that. Noble's integration with IBAN, where you can send stablecoins, USDC, directly from your bank account to your Noble address and back, is incredible. It's a great start, but there's a ton more work to do there. So if you're working on any of these three things, or you're interested in working on any of these three things, please come talk to someone from Cosmos Labs. We're looking to find more partners in these areas, because this next moment is super, super critical. As I said, there's less than 1% of 1% of all of the world's payments on chain so far, less than that in terms of assets. So there's a huge opportunity, but the market is moving insanely fast. There are hundreds of companies around the world spending tens of millions, billions of dollars now figuring out how are they going to come on chain. So the table is really being set. The die is really being cast over the next 12 months, and either we're going to have the speed and the skill and the execution capabilities to capture it, or we're not, and the only way we're going to do that is with the help of the community. So we're super excited to get more folks signed up for this mission, so please come talk to us. And that's it. Like I said, beginning, we have the best tech, we have a huge opportunity. We hope you come help us to capture it. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Barry Plunkett, co-CEO of Cosmos Labs. This was definitely very, very interesting.